All right, y'all, we are down to the last 3 chapters of Halloween Vibes, the Halloween novella in my Eternal Rest Bed and Breakfast Paranormal Cozy Mysteries. So let's get going. Chapter 10. What is Joe sorry about? Emily asked. Sage repeated the question, directing it at Joe, but the silence stretched, and she finally shook her head. He's not giving me anything clear, she said. I just feel wave after wave of remorse. He could be sorry about the way he acted toward me, Rebecca suggested in a timid voice. Or me, Bailey added. Or his last fight with Gloria, Emily said. Or the failed family business and the way he ruined his sister's finances. One of Sage's shoulders hitched up. Maybe he's sorry about all of it. Sage asked Joe again what he was sorry about, but he still wouldn't give a clear answer. Is there anything else you want us to know? Sage tried. Sherry inhaled loudly. Oh, smell those roses. I didn't know there was a bouquet in here. There's not, Sage said. In the dim light, Emily could see the satisfied way Sage was looking at her. Joe is the one who's sending that scent. He's trying to tell us something significant. Oh, Rebecca gasped. Like my corsage that we always used to laugh about. Interesting, Sage said, as she and Emily exchanged another look. Emily had already made the connection between the phantom smell and the corsage, and she had to wonder if Rebecca realized it made her look even more like a suspect. Or the flowers he gave Gloria last night before they had their big fight, Bailey said. She crossed her arms over her chest. He told me he bought her 24 roses, but instead of saying thank you, she yelled at him about wasting money. Did he tell you that when he showed up at your house last night? Emily asked. Yeah, right before I slammed the door on him. Bailey muttered something too quietly for Emily to hear, but it sounded like she was calling Joe some choice names. Rebecca and her rose corsage. Gloria and her bouquet of roses. And, Emily remembered, Joe's sister Jacinda had been wearing a rose print dress at the square that morning. Which one is Joe trying to tell us about? And is he trying to tell us the person associated with roses killed him, or something else? Sage tried several more times to coax Joe into communicating, but it was fruitless. Finally, she told Emily to turn the lights back on. Your guests need to get ready for the festivities, and so do we, she said, clearly disappointed they hadn't gotten more. Emily's guests, at least, didn't seem disappointed in the slightest. They were eagerly discussing what they had experienced as they got up and began trying on costume pieces again. Sage and Emily retreated to the kitchen, where Emily posed her question to Sage about who Joe was associating roses with, but Sage was as mystified as Emily. It's almost 5 already, Sage noted as they chatted. She nodded toward the clock on the wall. What do you mean, already? It feels like it should be later. What a long day. Agreed. But you and I both need to get ready for tricks and treats on the town square. Jen and I will be wearing superhero costumes because sometimes being a psychic medium makes me feel like one. Emily grinned. I'll be in the same costume I wear every year. Gravedigger. I need to load all the candy into my car too. I'll meet you 2 in front of your office building at 5:45. We can walk over together. Sage left and Emily slipped into her bedroom to put on her costume. It was a simple one, which was one of the reasons Emily liked it so much. The old, faded jeans were weathered to look like they were stained with grass and red Georgia clay, and her denim work shirt had a white logo on the back that read, Laid to Rest Grave Digging. You die, we dig. Once she was dressed, Emily loaded 2 hulking bags of candy into the trunk of her car, along with a shovel that she had grabbed from the shed. Emily checked on her guests before leaving. Bailey and Robbie were just wrapping up. Really, Robbie was the one packing up while Bailey issued orders to him, pointing where he should put each item. Just lock the door from the inside when you head downtown, Emily told Wyatt. I've got to get set up at Eternal Rest Candy Station at 6. Wyatt gave Emily a nod and promised the group would do their best to frighten her during the course of the evening. Tricks and treats on the town square was an annual Oak Hill tradition. Folding tables would be set out around the square, and a local business was responsible for giving out candy at each one. Kids would run from table to table, filling up their bags with treats, while the adults could dance to classic Halloween songs or simply sit and watch the fun. Emily was grateful for the event because Eternal Rest was too far from town and other houses for trick-or-treaters to come by. This way, she got to enjoy the holiday, see kids in their costumes, and catch up with friends, all at the same time. Just as promised, Emily was standing in front of Sage's office building at 15 minutes before 6. Sage and her wife Jen came out the front door, both dressed in spandex outfits with capes that billowed behind them. Emily had to stifle a giggle. Jen's red curls bounced as she bounded toward Emily. "Happy Halloween," she said brightly. "You two look fantastic," Emily enthused as she hoisted her shovel higher on her shoulder. A few families were already gathered in the town square when Emily, Sage, and Jen arrived. Otherwise, it was only the local business owners and city officials there, getting the last preparations done before the event started at 6. Trevor had promised to help Emily with her candy station, and he had come armed with decorations. He had covered the table assigned to Eternal Rest with an orange and black tablecloth, and a strand of twinkling purple lights snaked across it, giving several plastic skulls an eerie glow. It would look even better, Emily knew, once it was completely dark. Trevor had decided that if Emily was going to be a gravedigger, then he should be a corpse. He was wearing a black suit, and he had made up his face to look deathly pale, with dark circles under his eyes. Emily jerked her head to the right as she put the bags of candy down. "You should go over to the Bonham and Sons Funeral Home candy station. They've got a casket for people to take a photo in." "We'll go together," Trevor promised. "You can pose like you're getting ready to bury me." Sage and Jen were setting up the Seeing Beyond candy station to Emily's left. She looked to her right and was happy to see Reed, who would be representing Hilltop Cemetery. Like Trevor, he was wearing a suit, but it looked slightly old-fashioned, and he had added a top hat to his ensemble. "What are you supposed to be?" Emily called. "A sexton, just like I am every day." Reed lifted his top hat, but one from the era when the cemetery was founded. Bailey and Robbie passed by the tables a few minutes later, clearly heading for the Let's Play Dress-Up candy station. Emily tried not to stare as they went past, because Bailey was carrying a bunch of red satin roses in one hand. "Sage!" Emily hissed as soon as the two of them had passed by. Bailey was carrying roses. Joe could have been indicating her earlier with the smell. "The list grows," Sage said. "Joe is going to have to get more specific if we're going to figure out which woman he's talking about." "That's not all," Emily said. She gestured for Sage to come over, then turned and did the same to Reed. Once they were in front of her table, Emily said pointedly, "The roses in Bailey's hand are made of red satin." "Like the scrap of fabric you found by my ruined pumpkin patch in the cemetery," Reed said. He looked in the direction Bailey and Robbie had gone. "You think she's the one who carved up my pumpkins, then carved up Joe?" "Ew," Sage said, a look of disgust on her face. "Did I rent costumes from a murderer?" Emily didn't answer because she, too, was looking toward the Let's Play Dress-Up table a short distance away. Slowly, her eyes roved across the square where the first trick-or-treaters of the evening were running along in their costumes. "No," Emily said after a long moment. "Bailey didn't kill anyone, but I know who did." Without waiting to give an explanation, Emily began walking, not in the direction of Bailey's booth, but toward a spot slightly to its left. Sage and Reed followed, and when Emily stopped, Sage said, "The scarecrow did it?" Emily was standing directly in front of a scarecrow that had thorny vines wrapped around it. At its feet, dozens of red satin roses were arranged, so it looked like the scarecrow was standing in a field of them. Bailey stepped up next to Emily. "It looks great, doesn't it? You have no idea how long it took to make all these roses." She handed the ones clutched in her hand to Robbie, who had trailed after her. "I don't think the scarecrow needs any more. Why don't we give these out to trick-or-treaters?" "Knowing Joe had hurt Rebecca too was the last straw for you, wasn't it?" Emily asked, not daring to pull her eyes away from the scarecrow. She heard the slight shake in her voice and realized she probably should have let Danny handle this. Too late now. Joe ruined his sister's finances, and he created a world of heartache for his girlfriends. but realizing the pattern started years ago with Rebecca convinced you something had to be done. You saw the confrontation between the two of them, and you started forming your plan to kill Joe right then and there. What? Bailey asked. She was staring at Emily, one hand pressed against her chest. You think I killed Joe? I'm not talking to you, Emily clarified. I'm talking to Robbie. Robbie dropped the satin roses Bailey had handed him. Before Emily could act, he grabbed the scarecrow and pushed it toward her, then tried to run. He only took one step before his foot caught one of the thorny vines, and he tripped and fell face first into the grass, right at the feet of Detective Danny Hernandez. Perfect timing, Detective, Emily said as she sidestepped the scarecrow, which had fallen harmlessly at her feet. Would you please arrest this man for the murder of Joe Carruthers? So that is the end of chapter 10, and tune in to the next video for the conclusion of Halloween Vibes.